President Trump held another surreal press conference today to defend his Supreme Court nominee after a last-minute Senate deal to allow an FBI investigation. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. President Trump is obviously very eager to talk about anything other than his historically unpopular Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. Only 35% of Americans believe Kavanaugh is telling the truth, and only 34% support his nomination. And during the hearing, it looked like he had only about 33% support from his wife. Although it doesn't surprise me that this guy is unpopular. I mean, look at him. He looks like the kind of guy who yells at 6-year-olds, "You have to have a permit for this lemonade stand!" And today, Trump held another surreal press conference in the Rose Garden, ostensibly to discuss his renegotiated NAFTA deal with Mexico and Canada. But as multiple female reporters tried to ask him about Kavanaugh, he shot them down in super demeaning and sexist ways.
Yes, behind you, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that you've answered several questions on trade, I'd like to turn
don't
to Judge
do that.
Kavanaugh.
Do you have?
President,
excuse me. Do you have a question on trade? We'll do one or two more questions on trade.
You answered several questions
on
trade.
Okay, don't do that. That's not nice.
Mr. President,
and besides that, somebody is before you. Excuse me. Don't do that. Do you have a question on trade?
You answered several questions.
Do you have
on
a
trade.
question on trade?
My question is on Judge
Okay,
Kavanaugh.
please, yes. Go ahead, please.
Just to wrap
please.
up, can you promise
You know
to
what? You've really
release
had
the
enough.
FBI's
Hey,
report?
you've had enough. Question? Yeah, go ahead. Sure. She's shocked that I picked her.
No.
She's in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, how much of a sexist dick can you possibly be? It's almost like, wait. It's almost like he saw someone else getting attention for acting like a maniac on TV and thought, I can top that. Trump offered a lengthy, rambling defense of Kavanaugh, and then he questioned the credibility of one of the women accusing Kavanaugh of sexual assault.
Just to be clear, should the FBI interview all three of Brett Kavanaugh's accusers?
It wouldn't bother me at all. Now, it depends. I don't know all three of the accusers.
All three.
Certainly, I imagine they're going to interview two. The third one I don't know much about, but it wouldn't bother me at all. I mean, I've been heard that the third one has, I have no idea if this is true, has very little credibility.
Only Trump could say, I have no idea if this is true, and then question whether someone else is telling the truth. I heard a rumor. She likes to spread rumors. Pass it on. Now, Trump was asked about the FBI investigation into the claims against Kavanaugh and whether that investigation should include what seems like some pretty obvious lies about his heavy drinking past. Trump again veered off into a random tangent about the fact that he doesn't drink alcohol at all.
If he did lie about his drinking, does that mean you'll pull his
I don't think he did.
Okay.
Look, here's what. I'm just saying, I'm not a drinker. I can honestly say I never had a beer in my life, okay?
Right.
It's one of my only good traits. I don't drink. Whenever they're looking for something good, I say, I never had a glass of alcohol. I've never had alcohol. I've just, for whatever reason. Can you imagine if I had? What a mess I'd be. I'd be the world's worst.
What's amazing about that joke is that inherent in the premise is Trump admitting that he already sucks. I mean, think about it. That joke doesn't work if everyone thinks Trump is a great president. He's basically saying, if you think I'm an ass now, imagine if I had a few beers. I'd be a nightmare. But Trump had a brief flicker of self-awareness there, and then it immediately vanished as he complained again about being treated unfairly by the press.
I think the press has treated me unbelievably unfairly. In fact, when I won, I said, the good thing is now the press finally gets it. Now they'll finally treat me fairly. They got worse. They're worse now than ever. They're loco, but that's okay.
I know Trump has never had a beer in his life, but he talks like a guy begging the bartender to give him back his keys. I can drive. To be loco. Coco. Trump's blood alcohol level could be 0, and the bartender would still say to him,
You've had enough.
in fact, much like a drunk guy at a bar who starts telling his buddies how much he loves them, Trump decided to get very personal at a rally on Saturday in West Virginia where he offered this bizarre praise for North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
I was really being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love, okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
Man, if you had told me I would live to witness a Republican president telling a crowd in West Virginia that he was in love with a North Korean dictator, I would have said, I'm sorry, buddy, I don't have $1 and this is my stop. Also, I really do feel like it's worth pointing out that when Trump first got that beautiful letter from Kim earlier this year, he admitted that he hadn't even read it.
A letter was given to me by Kim Jong-un, and that letter was a very nice letter. Oh, would you like to see what was in that letter?
Can you give us a flavor of what the letter said?
It was a very interesting letter.
What was your response to the letter? Did you send anything back?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen the letter yet. I purposely didn't open the letter.
Oh, no, dude. Dude, you didn't read the letter. Before you talk about how in love you are, you might want to read the letter. But that's the thing. The thing is, Trump would much rather talk about his bromance with Kim Jong-un than Republicans' handling of the sexual assault allegations against Kavanaugh. For weeks, Democrats called for a routine FBI investigation, which Republicans refused. But then on Friday, something dramatic and unprecedented happened. Arizona Senator Jeff Flake announced that he would vote yes on Kavanaugh's confirmation, and shortly after he made that announcement, he was confronted in an elevator in the Capitol by survivors of sexual assault, courageously explaining their own personal traumas and demanding that he explain his vote to their faces. Now, Flake was still a yes on Kavanaugh, but then during the committee hearing a few hours later, Democratic Senator Chris Coons floated a proposal for a brief delay to allow for an FBI investigation, and then he and Flake disappeared into a back room while a bunch of other Republican senators had no idea what was happening.
After Democratic Senator Coons floated his compromise, Republican Jeff Flake stood up and walked from the Republican side of the dais to the Democratic.
It all started with this scene right here. Senator Flake tapping his colleague Chris Coons on the shoulder.
Apparently, at some point during the course of events, something came up and he left the room. Something is happening. We don't know what it is or what it's going to end up resulting in.
And then the room went silent, and no one is saying anything. And you could watch the grim faces of Lindsey Graham and Orrin Hatch and Chuck Grassley sitting there, helpless, doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, sure, but are those guys' faces ever not grim? I mean, look at them. They all look like they just got the wrong order at the deli. They always look like they're browsing the Acorn Stairlift showroom. This looks like that movie where some old guys want to rob a bank before they die. You just need, oh yeah, there you go, there you go. I'd watch that on demand. So, Flake went into a back room and struck a deal with Democrats for a one-week delay in the Kavanaugh vote to allow for an FBI investigation. And when he came back out, he tried to explain the deal to everyone else. There were still a lot of details that were unclear. Would there actually be a vote on Flake's proposal? What exactly would a sufficient investigation entail? Instead, the chairman of the committee, Chuck Grassley, abruptly shut down the meeting, citing an obscure rule. And on a hot mic, you could hear the other senators trying to figure out what the hell just happened.
I'm prepared to do it. Make a request to the White House to ask the FBI to do that investigation. It would be short and limited in scope to the current allegations that have been made.
Mr. Chairman.
But I would just encourage the Democrats who we talked to before to endorse that kind of thing, that we can then move on.
Mr. Chairman.
Because of the 2-hour rule, we're adjourned.
What?
The 2-hour rule.
No vote.
When did we come in? Did we come in at noon? No. Yeah, we did. Yeah, the 2-hour rule.
Oh my God. It's like watching your grandparents try to operate a parking meter. Did we get here at noon? When do we have to put more money in? It's 2 hours. It's a 2-hour rule. It's a 2-hour rule. I told you when we parked it. So the basic outline of the agreement was a 1-week delay to allow for an FBI investigation. Afterwards, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham was asked what had happened and said he wasn't sure. But he did know one thing: someone would have to tell the president.
What Jeff is saying is in the makes sense to me. If that again,
you think that Murkowski?
I don't know. I'm not speaking for Mitch. I'm going to talk with Jeff, and somebody's got to explain this to Trump. So, I guess that'll be my job.
Oh yeah. Act like you hate it, Brer Rabbit. Somebody's got to judge this pie contest. I guess I'll have to do it. You love being the Trump whisperer because it keeps you on the Sunday morning talk shows. If it wasn't for Trump, the only show you'd be on is the Food Network's Biscuits for One with Lindsay. Welcome back. Tonight's guest is no one. Just me and you, Biscuit. But then as we learned more about the FBI investigation, the less serious it seemed. It was reported that the White House had put strict limits on who the FBI could talk to and what they could investigate. In fact, the central figures involved in the alleged assault weren't even on the witness list.
The New York Times reports that the White House authorized the FBI to interview just 4 witnesses.
The FBI will question a specific witness list this week, a list that does not include Kavanaugh's third accuser, Julie Swetnick, or former classmates who could share details about Kavanaugh's college drinking habits and shed potentially some light on alleged sexual references in his high school yearbook.
Sources telling CNN Christine Blasey Ford and Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh are not on the initial list given to the FBI suggesting who they should interview.
Okay, if you start out an investigation by listing all the things you're not investigating, that's not a real investigation. That's like going on a trip to Paris and saying, I don't want to see the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, or Notre Dame. I'm going from the airport to the Hard Rock and back to the airport. There's not a single Sherlock Holmes novel called Sherlock Holmes and the Actually That's Not Important, Don't Look at That. During the hearing last week, Kavanaugh lied repeatedly about key details of his heavy drinking high school and college days, details that have been contradicted by many of his classmates. Now, today, it was reported that the White House told the FBI they could interview anyone they deemed necessary. And, of course, they should. Not investigating Kavanaugh's lies or interviewing people who could corroborate the allegations against him would be, in a word,
loco.
This has been A Closer Look.